Hey, hello! This is Professor Game, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking who bring us the best of their experiences to get ideas, insights, and inspiration to help us in the process of getting students to learn what we teach. And I'm Rob Alvarez. I work at IE Business School Publishing, where we create interactive and engaging learning materials. Today we have somebody very special. We have Professor Jared Chapman. He ran across the idea of gamification in his research, and he became very intrigued. He began to wonder if he could design a course in which his students might get addicted to doing homework. A similar thing to how he has observed this happen in the students addicted to their smartphone. This led to the creation of the Project Delphinium, which is an attempt to address the challenge of student skill and will in online learning by applying gamification principles. Dr. Jared Chapman is also an assistant professor in the Utah Valley University's Woodbury School of Business. Dr. Jared Chapman, are you prepared to engage?
Yes, thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.
Welcome to the show, Jared. So let's get started. The first question that we have today is, as always, what does a regular day with Jared Chapman look like?
So most of my days start pretty early in the morning. I have a team of programmers so I'm in the United States, but they are in Eastern Europe, and so their timeline is different than mine. So about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, I get up and I start working with them as they are building game elements for Project Delphinium, and we're currently working on an avatar system and a system for adding achievements and those kind of things to a course. And so we iteratively kind of rapid prototype. They build stuff during their day. By the time they hit their end of their day, I'm waking up in the morning and I review what they've made, and then we just rinse and repeat every single day.
Wow, very intense schedule.
Yeah, it's good. It takes me until about 10 o'clock in the morning most days after I usually go over all their stuff and leave comments so that when they wake up the next day, they can start working on the new comments. And then I'm a professor, so I go and I teach my courses and do my research and those kind of things. I like to my research stream is gamification, so I'm reading and writing papers on gamification and those kind of things quite a bit.
Well, sounds like the dream life.
It is fun.
That's very important. Always keep fun in mind, and you will have very nice days.
I agree.
So, Jared, now we want to dive into a story. We want you to tell us specifically a story of what you consider was the worst application of gamification in which you've participated. It could be as a participant, as a designer, as a professor. Tell us about it.
I'm gonna answer that slightly different than the question, and I'll answer it to what people usually get wrong in gamification, especially in educational gamification. There's this great paper out there, and I wish I wasn't thinking about it till just now, but the title of it is something along the names of "School is a Game and This Game Sucks."
We can add it to the show notes later.
Let's see if we can find that. It's a great article, and it makes some really good points. Education is game-like already. It has points. It has leaders. There are status symbols with A's and B's and C's, and there are certifications and achievements with passing a grade or completing a course. It's game-like. But people don't like to play that game called education. We have a lot of people drop out of school, or if they're in school, they're bored, they're uninterested. And so the problem is having game elements is not the same thing as being an interesting game or a gamified environment. So I think that's the first thing people get wrong is they don't think about what gets people motivated to play a game. What makes games good?
Sorry to interrupt you here, Jared, but do you have any concrete examples? Like, for example, something you've seen. Of course, don't name anybody because we don't want anybody feeling bad about it. But do you have any concrete example of how this has gone wrong in something that you've seen in your daily life?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I imagine this very visually in my mind, right? So I think the concrete example is nearly every course anyone's ever taken in school. I mean, that seems extreme, but if you've ever been bored in a class, it's because the game was designed poorly.
Hmm. That's right.
Uh, does that make sense? So it's not any one example; it's almost every example of education, and I think that's noteworthy and something that we should think about. That people love learning when you don't put it in a school. Everybody. I don't want to push this too far. There are people who love school, but if you think about something you do as a hobby, something you do for fun, something you just enjoy, and you do it because for no other reason but that you want to learn it, think about how that environment is different than, say, an elementary school
Hmm.
experience for a student, or even a college classes. I teach at the college level.
Yeah.
Um, there are so some of the terms that are out there are pointification, where you know what I'm saying? They will turn this into a game by throwing points and leaderboards at it. That's still not a fun game.
Yeah.
And another kind of idea out there is,
Sorry to interrupt again. I'm going to give a talk in Gamification Europe. Probably when this comes out, it'll be already done. It starts. The title starts by I called it "Death by Badges." So you can
yes,
imagine. I can completely relate.
yeah. Another term out there is exploitationware.
Yeah.
Sometimes gamification gets called that when it's poorly designed, because it. Oh, I forget his name too. He wrote the. I've got the books here in front of me. Let me just look at his name. It's Yukai Chow. He wrote a book called Actionable.
Yeah. Actionable gamification. He's a past guest as well.
He
Very good book.
talks about
Exploitation ware. Yeah.
yeah, he talks about black hat and white hat gamification, and this idea that yeah, you can make people do stuff as long as they're in your game, but they won't like you afterwards, and that's not a recipe for educational gamification. People,
Absolutely. You're in it for the long game. I mean,
yeah,
primary and high school is 11, 12 years, and then you're expecting many people to go to college, so they have 3, 4, 5, 6 years more. So you're really into it for the long run, for the long term. You want to make sure people are engaged and that they want to be engaged.
I agree. Yeah, so I agree. So thus, I don't have specific examples, and I don't tend to look at a lot of what other people are doing in that way. My focus has been more. We know education isn't working, and so my research is to work with live students in live classes and say, this is our best attempt. What's working and what's not working, and let's iterate and make a new version for the next semester. And I've been doing that for about 3.5 years now.
I'm gonna jump in again. You said what's working and what's not. Do you have one example of something that's not working?
Yeah, here's an example. So worst stuff. That's easier for me to say. What's the stuff that I've made that's not good? I can
Good.
tell you that. Uh, so when we first started putting things out, I did what everybody did. I created a course interface with leaderboards and point meters and badges, and that was the entire experience.
PBL.
For very competitive students, they loved it. Didn't matter, they loved it. For students who were not necessarily that capable, they found it very intimidating, and they just shut down. Um, in a game, it's okay if we have a loser. Games are designed to potentially make some people losers and some people winners. That dynamic is not acceptable in an education.
Hmm.
And so we have to figure out a way to say, one of the papers that I'm writing right now is looking at player types in educational gamification, which is different than player types in games. And so if
You
you've,
probably
if
want
you've
to take a
ever,
look at what Andrei Marchevsky has been doing.
oh, I
He's a guy
haven't,
from Gamified UK.
I'd be interested to see what he's doing. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, he
So,
has he has a framework around that. I mean, it's user types for gamification, not for education, but for gamification in general. And he has like 6 types, but then they split up and they can become up to 12 types. So it's a pretty interesting framework, at least to take a look at and test out things. I think he published a paper as well recently with some university. He's not an academic,
Hmm.
he's a consultant, but he has pretty interesting stuff, and I'd really recommend you to check him out. It's his Twitter handle is like Dave Rage, I think, at Dave Rage.
Dave Rage, I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah,
So yeah, that's the kind of thing we're doing. So we're doing it with we're collecting a bunch of data and running a factor analysis, a very empirical approach to this
awesome.
to let the data tell us what the player types are, not anything else.
In the
And
future,
this is
we'll
the
probably make a special episode just to talk about this research. If you have
that,
anything you want to show.
yeah, well, that's the approach that I think it was Bartles took to explain player types in games in general.
Yeah, MMOs.
But he's clear to say that that does not necessarily transport to other environments that are
Oh,
game like.
absolutely. He even said it. He said, I created these for MMOs and games, definitely
Right.
not for other environments.
So my work is my effort has been to kind of extend what he has done and using basically the same methods, but doing it in a educational gamification environment.
Awesome.
So
Awesome.
what we end up with is there's this group of students who um, they're small. It's not a big group, but they hate the idea of playing and education going together.
Yeah.
I came to school, I work, I have a family, I'm trying to support my kids. I don't want to look at your dumb fun interface. Just give me the assignments and let me push through it. So that's something I think about a lot is how do you create flexible interfaces that can accommodate a variety of player types. Um, so for me right now, that means we're building out an interface for those students that is just bare bones, straightforward. It's more dashboard than game environment,
Yeah.
and it still employs a lot of the game mechanics, game elements, but it does it in a very bare bones, straightforward way so that we can accommodate their needs as well.
That's awesome, Jared. Thank you very much. That was an expanded, very interesting answer. But I want to move to our next question, and it's
Sure.
probably related to what we've been talking about. And I want you to tell us what's one of the biggest challenges that you faced and solved actually using gamification for education.
Yeah, so probably the biggest challenge is the technology side of it. I have a dream of creating an environment where 1,000 plus students are in my online class. They've never met me and they've never met each other, but they still say that they've had a more personal experience than they would have had in a face to face experience. And so that to me is has been sort of the pursuit of the last 4 years or so, building that kind of technology. And we are on version 3 of a project we've called Project Delphinium right now. I'll drop that email or that URL. So if somebody wants to look that up, it's Delphinium, like the flower, delphinium.uvu.edu, where you can read more about it.
So like
Um,
dolphin, but with an e and delphinium, right?
yeah, it's kind of. I actually don't. It is based on the dolphin and delphinium have the same roots
Hmm.
etymologically. There is a dolphins are playful. The flower looks like a dolphin. The flower represents playfulness, so
Hmm.
that's why it's named delphinium. And it's just a cool sounding word. I liked how it sounded.
Yeah, sounds
So
cool.
so we spend quite a bit of time building technology. You'd be surprised how much of this is not about making a better leaderboard, but making a better way to pass student data and process student data quickly so that the students have a good user experience. Um, I think a leaderboard was the first thing I made 4 years ago, and it's become one of it was. It took me 2 or 3 days. I've taken several years now to try to make sure that the I can pull data and share data among components quickly and efficiently so that the students have a good experience.
Oof. Long time. Long time. Well, I hope it's being worth it because if you're excited about that, I'm sure that it's bringing some amazing results for you, and of course, it'll the result will come when time is ripe.
It is. We're having fun, and we are. We've had it now in front of about 30 different classes, and the results are very strong and encouraging. So it's great to see students performing better because of something we're doing.
Awesome, awesome. That sounds great. Sounds like a great experience. Is there anything you want to leave the engagers, the listeners with, that you've learned throughout these years of developing this platform?
Yeah, I think I'm an academic, right? So I tend to wax a little more theoretical, but I like oh, what's his name? Shoot, I should have prepared a little better with all the names. Sebastian, does this name
Deturning,
sound?
yeah.
Yes.
Sebastian Deturning.
So, yeah, so this guy, I like what he's done, and he, especially when he's kind of tied this in with um, self-determination theory. I
Hmm.
think if you really want to understand the white hat side of gamification, to borrow Cho's terminology, you need to understand self-determination theory, and that is to say, you want to create environments where people feel autonomy, socially connected, and competent. If you can create that, that's really what gamification is the art of. Um, if you can do that, then people will want to play the game. They will feel happy being there and they'll feel comfortable. The second, probably most, I think, one of the most important researchers is Richard Landers. And he has a theory of gamified learning that it's worth looking up and it's worth talking about. And from his work, I've kind of started to develop my own, or not my own, I'm extending kind of his model in some of my publications to this notion of skill, will, and thrill. So gamification is of education is the art of skill, will, and thrill.
Hmm.
You want to set up scaffolding that helps students know the skill of learning.
It's like
Learning
the
is a
the flow the extension of the flow theory of I can pronounce his name Mistehali or
yeah,
Cheskali
yeah.
Mistehali or something like that,
He,
right?
I would consider him under the will side, right?
Hmm.
So the will would be so that's an flow is an engagement theory.
Hmm.
So motivation and engagement, I would say, is will. Skill is going to be more your theorist on how learning works. So Bandura and some of these social learning people, and really, if I boiled that down into the simplest thing I could say, is the skill of understanding where you are in a course, where you want to go in a course, and how to get there, and where you've been and what that means for your practice. So where you've been, where you are, and where you want to go, and just seeing that as kind of a virtuous loop,
Hmm.
a feedback loop. So designing the course to provide that information, surface that all of that information is always in a course, but you never really know it. So designing game interfaces, all good game interfaces have good dashboards, and so dashboarding is an important idea in educational gamification to surface the skill.
Hmm.
The will we've talked about. Flow theory is one that we are assessing in our courses, and self-determination theory for motivation is the other one we're assessing. And then will, or no, thrill. You want this
Thrill.
thing to be fun, right?
Hmm.
You want people to say, uh, I'll give you two examples of thrill. So
Sure.
I have students who I'll give a test in class, and they'll finish the class early. Then they'll jump into the game interface and take a picture of the leaderboard because for that 2 seconds they're the top. So and they'll pull out their phones and take a picture of the screen. So they have that. Now it doesn't matter because in 2 more seconds someone else is going to finish and they're going to drop back down. But they love that feeling of accomplishment. I had another student in my office just the other day, and he was saying, "Man, this stuff works." I was with my wife. We were watching Netflix, and as I was sitting there, I started feeling a little anxiety, and I thought, I could be doing homework right now, and that would be more fun. So we want to create those types of feelings in our students so they want to get engaged with their homework.
Lovely. Jared, we're going to pass to right now to part two of the interview. Here, we've been expounding very much in each of the answers. They've been amazing. But in the second part, I would like to go like more not superficial, but quick answers. Here, we're not anymore about stories, but about specific tips and specific tactics. So the first question I have is for you to name one thing that you consider a best practice for gamification.
Um, Consider creating the environment where people can feel socially connected, autonomy, and competency. That should be driving your design.
Sounds very much like Marchevsky, which I mentioned to you before. He talks about RAMP. He mentions it as relatedness, autonomy, mastery, and purpose, which can also be, you can map that to Yukai's four of his core drives. But it sounds like it's very much in that same aura. So I definitely think you could connect to Andre. He's a very nice guy as well. The next question, Jared, and this could be a video game or a regular game. But what's your favorite game?
So I'm not sure this answer is going to play very well, but I'm not a gamer. I I like building stuff. I like making stuff. And to me, that's still all of the same things that make games work, make that work: autonomy, connectedness, and competency. But I did start picking up games to try and just understand them better. So probably my favorite game that I picked up and played around with was Plants vs. Zombies. I enjoyed that one. And
Very popular
probably
as well.
the worst game I think was Candy Crush. That was an abusive game.
Yeah, absolutely. I hate it. I started playing for like 1 minute and hated it completely.
I was addicted and I couldn't put it down, but I hated being that way.
Yeah.
And eventually it kind of wore until I quit it. But I think that's a great example of a game that it's manipulationware, it's exploitationware. It's not a fun game to play.
Yeah. Many people enjoy it very much, but I'm sure many people have had that experience as well. Jared, is there anybody that you, I don't know, either admire or want to have some more insights of that you would like interviewed in Professor Game?
Yeah, I let's see. You sounds like you've done Cho.
Yep.
I think how Sebastian. Have you done?
Nope.
Have you had?
Haven't
I
met him
think
either, so maybe it could be a nice person to get introduced to.
uh,
I'll
another.
try to reach out.
I think a person that would be great is Richard Landers. He's written some great papers on educational gamification, which
Richard
has
Landers.
slightly different. Like I said earlier, there's different needs from an educational environment.
Mm-hmm.
We can't create environments that force losers. And so we've got slightly different objectives and methods. So I think he's interesting, and a really nice guy as well. And then I have let me look up
It's a
another.
Santa's list.
Yeah, so one more person that I think does a lot in this that you probably have met or run across is I have to make sure I say his name right. Juho Hamari.
No,
He's
never
from
heard of him.
Finland.
No?
Yeah, he's
Interesting.
from Finland, and he's done a lot of publications. Um, I don't. I mean, I know there's kind of two sides of this. There's the consultant side, and then there's the academic side.
Yeah.
Definitely, in my opinion, there's more rigor in the scientific side. But I mean, of course, I'd say that because that's where I'm coming
Well,
from.
the academy is all about rigor. I mean, I work at a university as well, and I can relate to that. But I also create many things. I mean, we create engaging materials. So I'm also on the practicing side, so I can relate to both of you guys. But of course, academy is all about rigor. That's very important.
And the stuff we come up with is not always that portable,
Hmm.
which I think is what you get from
the consulting folks is they're designed to be memorable and portable. The idea is the product, so to speak, and so that does a lot to further the inroads that gamification makes. If it's not an easy idea to get your head around, and if you're a layperson or a practitioner or an instructional designer who just doesn't know a ton about this, you need somebody to present it in a way that's very portable.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that they do as well. So
Yeah.
I'd like to continue to see both worlds merge and share ideas more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jared, what's your superpower?
My superpower is honestly is focus. I can do the same thing for a very long time, and I get really focused on things. Um, Determination of will, I'd say. This is
Hmm.
something I'll I will push this thing until we accomplish our goals. We do a lot of fundraising to I'm all, we've got to keep those programmers paid, and so a lot of my work is just building up of the community around what we're doing. Speaking of community, you can find us on LinkedIn. Project Delphinium has a LinkedIn page that I'd love to fill up with people, and I think that's what it takes to see something like this through.
Awesome. Jared, this is a random question that we get from the audience, and this time what we got is from a teacher from I think it's a high school, it seems.
Mm.
She says, "I'd like to ask because I've never applied gamification, and this is the first time I'm approaching this. I'd like to ask your guest, how would you start applying gamification as a high school teacher? Where would you go? What would be the sources? I guess is the question. What would be your approach to this? If you, again, with a newbie, a person who've never heard of this, aside from listening to interviews like this one, where would you point them towards?
I There are several good books I think along those lines that could get you thinking. I don't have them. I'm not in my office, so I don't have them in front of me. One I think is called Gamifying Your Classroom, or something along those lines.
By Carl
Um,
Cap could be
yes,
Carl
yes.
Cap. Okay.
Now that book is like half just straight up instructional design, but it does have some good introduction into gamification. I don't think you have to be super technical like I do. I have some colleagues who gamify their class with fake money.
Hmm.
As they, it's a little more pointification in that way, but they reward behavior with fake money that you can then trade in for a skipping a day of class, or adding points to an assignment or something along those lines. So if you look at Richard Lander's stuff, gamification in education is about trying to elicit a specific behavior or attitude that results in a learning outcome you care about.
Hmm.
So the first step is to figure out the outcomes you care about, then back out to that and say, what kind of behaviors and attitudes would give you that outcome? And back out from there and say, what game elements would elicit those behaviors and attitudes?
Hmm.
That's as far as a great theory of how to develop educational gamification. As far as I know, that's the only show in town is his model of how to develop educational gamification, and it's well founded and it's well researched and it's useful information. So
Awesome.
that's her process, I think.
Awesome. Sounds great. Very interesting. Finally, Jared, I would like you to tell us how we can connect with you. If you have any final piece of advice, and then we'll say it's a game over.
Yeah, so delphinium.uvu.edu. That's my website. You can email me through that website. We can start a conversation. You can join us on LinkedIn, Project Delphinium. I think if you go to tinyurl.com/Project Delphinium, that will take you directly to our LinkedIn account.
And I,
I have a
I
few.
certify that through your webpage you can be contacted because that's how we got into contact. So absolutely, Jared completely responds, and he's very nice.
Well, great. Thank you, Rob. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate you including me in the program.
Thanks to you, Jared. So thank you very much. Remember, you can get into contact with Jared through his Project Delphinium at delphinium.uvu.edu. I think I got that right. And remember,
Yeah.
Delphinium, like dolphin, Dolphinium, but you have to change the O for an E. So thank you very much, Engagers, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, Jared.
Thank you.
Wow, Engagers, that was a lot of awesome information from Jared Chapman. Were you enjoying Professor Game? Please let us know. You can follow me on Twitter at RobAlvarezB, or you can also use the hashtag ProfessorGame and let us know. Give us your feedback. Hey, before you go on to your next mission, wouldn't you want to know and get into the head of a game developer? Well, listen to the next episode of Professor Game and listen to Tony Chan from Game Dev Loadout. See you there!